Welcome friends, today we gonna play Pokemon Stadium on the Sega Genesis. I actually have a physical copy of this game. It's obviously an unlicensed bootleg, and it's also got a super version. This game is an absolute broken mess, and I love it. It's both super cool and hilariously flawed at the same time. So first off, we got two modes, multiplayer versus and arcade mode. So let me show you this roster. We got Spia, Dogas, Blizzard, Windy, Kamez, Galas, Kabik, Daggett, Genga, Hoodin, Thund, and Pkag. Spia's my boy, let's get it. Alright, so the way that this works is you hold a button to charge up your meter, and then when it reaches certain thresholds, you press the attack button to do any of your attacks down here, so long as you've got enough meter to use that attack, and then the opponent gets a choice between evade or defense. One of them is just pure luck chance to evade the attack, and the other is a skill-based minigame. It reduces the damage based on how close you can stop the needle to the center, and if you hit a bullseye, then you completely prevent the damage. I like this system, it's a lot of fun. But you see it's broken because the meters reset to 0 after every interaction. So the meta is to just spam attack 1, and it becomes a game of quick draw, and everyone charges at the same rate, but all of the Mons actually have some different stats. So like you might at first think that Snorlax is the king of this game because of that enormous HP, but all the attacks also have different damage amounts, and old Kabik only hits for 6 damage. So like, Gyarados, Charizard, Blastoise, and Arcanine all have 100 HP, and for some reason Abra has 120, but Abra's attack 1 only does 10 damage, and Charizard's first skill does 16, so that's balanced I guess. But Genga's first skill hits for a whopping 20, and he got more health than Charizard too. Genga busted in this game. If the other skills mattered at all, then this would be a whole lot more interesting. But in the Super version of the game, the meters don't reset after every interaction. So I'm pretty sure that the Genesis version is just bugged and programmed wrong. Also, the arcade mode in the Genesis version crashes after you win the first battle. We get to see the versus screen of the next fight, but it rolls over to the title screen as soon as the second battle should start. Also, the evade and defense mechanics are flip-flopped between the different versions, and the way they work makes more sense the way it is in the Super version. So it would really seem like the Genesis version is just a broken port of the Super version. First off, arcade mode be looking a little botched in the Super version, just a guess. But the reason for a lot of these unlicensed bootleg backports of games getting made was due to import restrictions on video games in places like China. And so because the new stuff was always so unobtainable, they would make games with modern titles on platforms that people commonly had. Which is also why the NES has the largest number of these sort of Chinese bootleg games. The NES lived for like 15 years or something crazy in China. And it was only allowed in originally because it was marketed as a family computer learning tool sort of thing. And then when these restrictions were finally starting to loosen up, the new stuff was just way too expensive over there because of all the extra import taxes. So if we can't get a PlayStation to play Final Fantasy VII, then we'll just make it on the NES instead. And like in the case of the 64, they completely rebranded it as this thing called the iQue, where the controller is also the console. It's sort of a plug-and-play type thing. And there's only 14 games that got made for it, and Pokemon Stadium isn't one of them. So let's backport it. And in the case of this game, you've also got these choice names for the Pokemon. What it looks like to me is the old double translate or double transliteration. So these names are very similar to the Japanese Pokemon names, but with some slight differences. And if you imagine that someone who doesn't really know Japanese or English probably made this, then it makes a lot of sense. So like, Beedrill in this game is called Spia. Beedrill's Japanese name is like a transliteration of the English word for spear. Supia, Spia, that one is pretty spot on. Blastoise is called Kamex in Japan, so Kames is pretty close. Pkag is kinda sus because Pikachu has the same name in both Japanese and in English, and it's also the same in Chinese as well. But you get the idea, they're all about like this. Maybe whoever made this also didn't know that much about Pokemon, which would also explain why attacks also have these superfluous sounding names. Like Hypnosis. That's like the final stage of some Final Fantasy spell. The animation is pretty cool though. Or like Yellow Aperture. Do you know what an aperture is? An aperture is an opening, a hole, or a gap. What in transliteration hell is this attack supposed to be? PCAG, use yellow hole. Attack with Anus Burst. But like, how does Abra damage you with Defense Wall? That's probably supposed to be Light Screen or Reflect. Mr. Mime would be so dangerous if he could smack you with those barriers. But which attack is World Inversion supposed to be? This Pokemon uses its psychic powers to turn you inside out. Terrifying. I'm really confused about this one though. Silk Truss. I don't even know what to compare it to. Is it supposed to be like that suspended dance thing that they do ballet in? Jigglypuff has this attack too. Who knows? So like, a truss is either one of those beam things that hold something up, or it's a device used to hold a hernia in place. Poor Hoodin. I'm sorry. We always thought Jigglypuff was the balloon Pokemon, but as it turns out, Purrin's entire body is just one big massive hernia. Or maybe they really botched the translation of Seismic Toss, because Vileplume has this move too, and I don't think plants can have hernias. But Hoodin's strongest attack is Magic Pillar. Oh, he straight blasts it at you. I bet that one's Psybeam. Alright, so the Super version has mostly the same cast with a few different characters. This time we got Raif, Pulin, and Mu. Jiggs is called Purrin in Japan, so that one is also pretty close. Especially when you know about the L and R thing in Japanese to English transliteration. Also, we got a taunt button. The Genesis version doesn't have that. Yo, shake it down, Gengar. Shake it down. You really styling on someone when you waste the time to taunt in a game like this. I always love Gengar. He's so expressive. And Gengar might be my favorite with his signature Magic Attack. And Power Magic Attack. Oh geez. And because the meters actually work properly, it's not a quick draw to just spam skill 1. It's actually interesting. Although the damage values on the attacks aren't very well balanced. Like Gengar's first skill does like 6 damage, and then the other 3 skills he has are all in the 30s. So like, why would I save up for skill 4 to do like 5 more damage? It's just optimal to spam skill 2 for Gengar at least. Let's try Mu. He's the world's strongest Pokemon after all. He's got the same HP as Gengar. Mewtwo's move 1 and 2 have the same damage as Gengar's. Some of Mewtwo's attacks even have the same name as Gengar's, even though they've got different animations. The balance is kind of all over the place, but it is actually interesting. There's a lot to explore with this one, and the damage you take gets reduced based on how accurately you can time the defense minigame, and then if you time it perfectly you completely avoid the damage. Also, pretty much everyone does about 40 or 50 damage with their move 4. So no one really stands out as the strongest attacker. But some of them do have a lot less HP than others without having enough extra damage to really compensate for it. It's not perfect, but there is at least some kind of balance here though. There also aren't any kind of weaknesses, so this game is very one-dimensional, but like, weaknesses wouldn't really be fair in a 1v1 heads-up sort of game. You'll just decide whichever particular move is optimal for your character and just spam that one. The animations are really cool. I've never seen a Daggett so erect before. And he gets so bricked up while he's charging. And his last skill runs a train on you. And watch out for Spia's prod attack. Oh geez. I'm pretty sure this game is unrated. I really like Pikachu's charge animation. Bro is a Super Saiyan. PCAG is his Saiyan name. You know, Mewtwo also be giving off some strong Frieza vibes. Feels like a parody waiting to happen. Alright, let's give him the Spirit Bomb. And Blastoise is a straight waterbender in this game. And that's canon. Get it? All the backgrounds are pretty good too. I just really appreciate 16-bit backgrounds. Beautiful. Not like in the same way that Donkey Kong Country is beautiful, but beautiful as in like, it's what's on the inside that counts. I mean, this desert background looks like something you'd see in a Final Fantasy game. I really like this ice mountain cloud sort of background. It's nice. It sort of reminds me of those old pixelized 16-bit photographs. It's a fun game to poke around in. The art style is both really janky and really cool at the same time. This game is a good laugh for anyone that hasn't seen it before. It's a great one to surprise your friends with. But if both players get really good at timing the evasion minigame, then a single match can last for a really long time. The arcade mode doesn't crash after the first fight in the Super version, but it does whenever you deal the last hit after about round 3 or 4. However, if you can manage to get through the game without it crashing on you, then you'll get to see this after you beat the arcade mode. You're the champion. And in like fashion, the Super version always clears, but even though the Genesis version is a broken mess, I like it.